Please stay. Thank you. Please be seated. Has everyone got a seat? There's a spare one up here. No? Everyone all good? Great. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. First up, some housekeeping. If anyone needs to use the bathrooms, just go out the door and through the restaurant, and the bathrooms are there. A subtle reminder about cell phones. Please turn them off or silent. Any calls? Melissa or somebody from the Vines will tap you on the shoulder with Bill on the way out. My name is Chris Geddy, and on behalf of George's family, thank you all for being here today as we gather to honour and celebrate the life of a truly remarkable man. To those who have joined us via live stream, welcome wherever you are. Thank you for being part of the farewell and a celebration of life for George. To Glenn, George's beloved wife of 60 years, and to all his children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, family and friends, we acknowledge the love that surrounds George today. Your presence speaks of the impact he had on so many lives. George was, in every sense, a man of the land, a man of quiet strength, a true gentleman. He carried himself with dignity, patience, and standards that showed in the way he behaved, the way he spoke, and even in the way he dressed when he came to town. He was a man who believed that how you presented yourself to the world mattered. But beyond the quiet dignity, he was a deeply loving man with an open heart and an open home. George welcomed people into his home, friends, family, neighbours, and children alike. Whether a child was biological, unofficially adopted, or simply someone who needed guidance and love, George embraced them fully and with an open heart. He saw the best in people. He taught and trusted his own children to become capable, competent adults because he believed in them. George often said, "Don't let your kids grow up stupid. Teach them to look after themselves." And while those words carried George's practical humour, they also reflected the values he lived by: independence, resilience, responsibility, and preparing people well for life. George delighted in beautiful humanity. He loved sunshine, songs, and laughter. He loved the sound of happy children and teenagers. He loved his life being filled with great people. Some of the fondest memories of George that was shared with the family were of him sitting quietly with a child on his knee, reading together. That spoke volumes about the gentle and patient man he was. George was a great reader of poetry. He appreciated wisdom, storytelling, and the richness of human experience. He carried kindness naturally, never loudly, but consistently. And if George approved of something or someone, there was one word many of us would hear: champion. A simple word perhaps, but from George it carried warmth, respect, and genuine affection. George and Glenn also shared a life built on partnership, trust, and adventure. Back in the 1960s, they packed up their lives along with a toddler and a baby and boarded a one-way ticket to Papua New Guinea. Their son Sia described it as having the courage for an adventure. Glenn simply said it was what you did. You supported each other. And throughout their 60 years together, that is exactly what they did. George supported Glenn wholeheartedly in her passion for sailing. It was nothing for Glenn to jump on a plane and disappear for 10 days, leaving George with the responsibilities of home. Importantly, Glenn never came home to 10 days' worth of washing. That quiet support said everything about George's love and character. George and Glenn were a team. Together they worked hard and eventually bought a home at Makaraka, creating a place filled with family, laughter and treasured memories. During the summer, George would send Glenn and the kids off to the beach to make those wonderful memories together while he continued to work. Then, whenever he could, he'd join them in the weekends. That was George, always making sure the people he loved were well cared for, supported, and given opportunities for joy. And while today naturally carries sadness because we will miss him deeply, George won't want this gathering to be a gathering of sorrow. He would want us to celebrate his life, to share stories, to laugh, to remember the good times that filled his life with love. Although we never truly ready to lose someone we love, George knew his family were ready to carry on without him. He knew they had the strength, the skills, the resilience, and the support to go on. Those were the things he helped teach throughout his life. George always knew he had lived the best life surrounded by the best people. And perhaps there is comfort for us that in this comes readiness and peace. George's life reminds us that ordinary people can do extraordinary things, not always through grand gestures or public recognition, but through quiet kindness, steady love, hard work, loyalty, the way they shape their lives around every single person every single day. That was George's greatness. Today we reflect not only on the loss we feel, but also on the privilege of knowing George, such a loving and grounded man. At this time, I would like to invite those to come forward to share memories and reflections of George's life. These tributes will help paint a picture of the gentleman we all knew. If you please come forward in order of the service sheet.
Our dear, beautiful George. A life well lived doesn't even come close. In his own words, he was a quiet gentleman who just got on with the jobs he saw to be done. But there was more, much, much more. George was a faithful, kind, and generous family man. That he was married to the love of his life for over 60 happy years speaks to that. A hill country farmer, the equal of any, he'd probably make a comment at that because he was modest too. He had a deep, beautiful voice that everyone could hear and listen to. Glenn's mum, best advice was to choose someone kind. Our George never raised his voice to Glenn or any of the 4 children they made or the 2 that they added or to anyone else. George was kind and generous to everyone, gladly offering his time and experience to the young people just beginning on the land. Of the 9 sheep and beef stations that Glenn and George farmed together, Kopanga stands out. If anyone doesn't know where that is, where have you been? It's 63k south of Gisborne. One man and a mob of 3,000 sheep being moved gently down the hill with just the help of his dog, often amazed the stream of young visitors to Kopanga. All visitors felt the warm hospitality of George that he willingly gave. Yes, 11 years farming sheep and beef over 2,000 acres of Kopanga was a very happy memory for George. The misty cold mornings, mustering in the hills with the help of his faithful friends. All loved, but Smoke may have been a favourite. In his own words, he was a softie. Perhaps that was a mutual opinion. Picture one such cold morning with all 5 dogs wanting prime position, cuddling George on the 4-wheeler. Farm boy, that tells us so much. In later years, George and Glenn's children, including those they added, delighted him. Luckily, he was a big man, so his knees would hold 3 little girls while he read them stories and poetry in front of the fire. Poetry has always sung in the air around George. George was a gentle man of the land. A life well lived doesn't even come close. Our dear, beautiful George, loved and for sure never forgotten. Our dear, beautiful George, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I've stood up here, I'll start again. I've watched people standing here before, commenting things were left unsaid. I don't have anything left unsaid, but I would like more casual chats with Dad. I had a terrible nightmare when I was 23. I dreamt that Dad had died. I woke up just beside myself and I had to ring Mum to check. Poor Mum. I wasn't convinced until she got Dad to ring me back. Then I was so relieved. A few years ago, coming up to Father's Day, I was talking to a friend, also called George. His father had died some years before, and I promised to tell my dad how much I love him and how much I would miss him when the time came. Again, my dad chuckled, told me he knew, and told me I was a funny girl. I didn't really feel funny. So often we were told we were lucky having our parents. We weren't lucky, we were blessed. Neither of them had held a tiny baby until I was born, and they discovered how the smallest person in the house creates the greatest chaos. A lot of thought and effort went into their parenting, a lot of patience and bewilderment too. They and I survived those early months, and then we all survived the free-range parenting that followed. They also survived our teenage years. The friends, the tears, the driving lessons. Dad's reflexes were tested more than once. Luckily for everyone, it was an old Massey Ferguson tractor that we learnt to drive on in a flat paddock. Uncle Trevor told me that Dad was like their mother, soft-hearted, gentle, quiet. Not Dad's laugh, that was loud. Very intelligent, very loyal, and very, very determined. He needed to be with us at times. Dad loved information and reading. Uncle Trevor would ask Dad about something, knowing that Dad would learn everything he could and then answer Trevor's questions. Uncle Trevor was pretty cheeky and quite clever with that. Dad was so proud of our successes, whether it was clapping our hands as babies, our academic achievements, sporting accomplishments or stage performance. He was so proud of how well we did. Like all of us, I have so many memories, stories and shared moments with my dad. Flying to Goroka to visit Mum and the new baby Tania. I was 3 years and 10 months old, and I remember flying through the valley with the little houses underneath, tying the white bomb, which was not actually a bomb, to the truck to take home to Mendy, sitting in his lap reading stories, long after when I could read, studying together his farm forestry papers, my school certificate papers, the road trip to Wellington with Mum for Mathew's graduation, stopping for a cup of tea at Tutera, and up at the electric, what's that thing there? Power farm. Dad didn't always say I love you, but he always demonstrated his love for us, planting cold rabbi because I thought I wanted to try them. Yeah, I don't like them. Apple cucumbers for Mum, and he doesn't like cucumbers. Buying a packet of seed at the end of the season when he discovered Nevaeh's love for butter beans, or she discovered hers. Dad did like beans. He was delighted when Tisha started gardening, and even more delighted when she gave him a trophy courgette. Usually he was the one giving veggies away. Dad hasn't left a big shadow. He cast a great light for us all to bathe in. He didn't leave big boots to fill, but solid footprints for all of us to follow. And that was our dad, now Grandad, and to his greatest delight, a great-granddad.
There are two sorts of people in the world. The ones you enjoy being with and the ones you don't. Of course, George fell into the former group. We first met 30 years ago in the back country up the coast. There's probably a handful of people you meet in your life that you just seem to click with. And George was one of these people. He was a good mate. Over the preceding 30 years, we had many discussions over cups of coffee. George built his understanding of life on solid ground. He had a sharp wit and a huge general knowledge. We had many laughs together. Several times he almost fell out of his chair laughing. Although he was an intellectual, he was also a very practical man. Living in the back blocks in isolation, he understood the value of a pocket full of baling twine, a length of number 8 wire, and a sheet of corrugated iron. He was a man that was at peace with the world and himself. And this was reflected in the way he portrayed himself, his quiet manner and his interactions with people and animals. Before he passed away, he told me that he had a good run and he was happy with his life. It'd be nice to convey a little story from the family. Those of you who didn't know, when George was a young man working on the farms, he used to ride in the rodeos. Not in the barrel races and the calf roping. He rode wild bulls and the bucking horses. At a particular rodeo, when he was sitting on the bull, they opened the gate and the bull charged out. And they started kicking and bucking. And George stayed on for a few seconds, and then he went up in the air. The sad thing about it, when he landed on his head. Unfortunately, yeah, he was lucky he never broke his neck, actually. He managed to get out the gate before the bull attacked him. But he left something very important in the arena. The trouble was, he didn't know what it was. It was his memory. The heavy landing on his head had caused concussion, and he didn't know where he was or who he was. When the rodeo finished, some of the cowboys went down to the local pub. George was still in dreamland and playing possum. Then he saw Ruatoria written across the entrance to the hotel, and he knew where he was. And that was the cheapest trip he ever made to the hotel, because he didn't have to buy any beer. Now I've got a poem. George loved poetry. I've got a poem here that's appropriate for George. It's about the high country and the bush and where he spent his life. It's a tribute to George. A beautiful jewel, this native bush, a rolling sea of green, a privilege to spend a life and view sight seldom seen. From summer's heat to winter's chill, he had seen it all pass by, and often he thinks, in sober mood, a natural place to die. He's lived a life few can live, one of the lucky men who, given a chance, could honestly say he'd do it all again. He's paid his dues and had a ball. Weep not a tear for me. Like morning mist, his spirit drifts for all eternity. Now, I might be taking a bit of a risk here, but George and I used to share the odd joke, and I'm going to share a couple with you just to lighten things up a bit. Hope I don't offend anyone, but you're all farming people. The first one, and this is true, this one. This is about Albert Einstein and Marilyn Monroe. And I think the aged people here all know who those people were. They actually met at a function in New York. And during the course of the evening, they got chatting to one another. And Marilyn said to Albert, she said, Albert, she said, why don't we get together and have a baby? She said it would be a very, very special child. She said, with my looks and your brains, it could go a long way. And Albert scratched his head and thought about it, and he said, true. He said, true, but he said, what did it have, your brains and my looks? The other one is about the era of Christine Keeler in the politics of Britain. Most of you people here would know who I'm talking about. The Perfumer affair it was called. And Christine Keeler was a cool girl. And she had a few mates, of course, with her. And they got involved with a lot of the high politicians in Britain and caused a big scandal. And this went on for quite a while. And then there was various resignations and prosecutions and one thing and another. Anyway, after it all settled down, Christine bought a poultry farm in the countryside out of London. And the local newspaper sent a reporter out to do an interview with her when she had this poultry farm. Anyway, the reporter turns up. Christine comes out and welcomes them. And he looked around, the old reporter looked around, and he said, this doesn't look much like a poultry farm to me, Christine. She said to him, you'll be surprised, many a cock's been raised here.
Hello, I'm Mathew. I'm one of the grandchildren. I haven't actually written anything, so I'll just make it up as I go along. Grandad, there are a few male figures in my life. A couple of them, couple of them weren't always there, but Grandad always was. And he's the greatest man I know. Sorry. Okay, got that over with. You probably know I've got a lot of friends around, and you guys know them all. I always bring them around all the time, and I like to show off my great family to my friends. Few of them are down here as well. You guys know the Rolfs, you know Byron, you know the lot. And Glenn and Grandad would always welcome them completely openly. And Grandad would always want them to call him Grandad too. He was just so kind and welcoming to everybody. Even to all the strange friends that I'd bring around. He'd just give them a big hug, say hello. Yeah. So thank you for that. So I think that's all I can think of at the moment.
Hi, I'm Briana. I'm the 8th grandchild out of the horde of them. I want to say first that we were so incredibly blessed to have Grandad as our granddad. He is the epitome of someone that had a heart of gold. He always, without fail, greeted me with a loud, "Hello, beautiful," a great big smile, and the warmest of hugs. I'm only going to share a few memories I have with Grandad. The first being every docking season that I was a part of, he would be so patient and indulgent because if there was a small lamb in the cradle, I'd stop him and say, "Grandad, you have to get it out carefully. It's tiny," despite the cradle being designed to flop them out carefully. Skipping forward a few years, now he was proud of all of us grandchildren, Gracie and her ballet, Sarai and her huckers. At my graduation, I'm sure he clapped the loudest and his smile was priceless. Jumping to December 2024, Grandad had slowed down and didn't rush. My partner Ash and I had invited the Grandies to come for lunch and receive an early Christmas gift. We handed them a bag with little booties and told them that their third great-grandbaby was on the way. Now, when I tell you that Grandad flew out of his chair with delight, I swear he could have been airborne. He was so beyond excited. The way he loved me and then loved his beautiful boy Malakai is so precious. On Tuesday, our last visit, we had finished lunch and Malakai was playing with Grandad's walker. I had said something along the lines of, "Yeah, those are the wheels on Grandad's walker," and this little boy said, "Dad." The three of us were taken aback as it was clear as day. A little memory Granny Glenn and I get to treasure. The last thing Grandad said to me was to never lose my bubbliness, my bright smile, and my love for life, and to always take care of his beautiful boy. So Grandad, thank you for being you, all the memories, and I promise I'll take care of your beautiful boy. He'll know all about you. I love you and I already miss you. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm here as a friend of George and to speak on behalf of the dog trail community. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Dan Hood and I had the pleasure of helping George in the bar at the Whakatutu Dog Trails. We were obviously kindred spirits, George and I, in that we both belonged to the club but never ran a dog, focusing instead on the more important aspect, the bar. Although I have to point out that George didn't actually drink. George managed Pine Hill Station at Tolaga Bay for many years and was always in charge of the bar at the Tolaga Trials. He became a familiar face to all the dog trialists from far and wide who competed and at the end of the day ended up at the bar. When he and Glennis retired to Tikaraka, it was only natural that the Whatututu Dog Trial Club would invite them to be part of the club, which they did, and both have been highly valued club members ever since. George a fixture at the bar and Glennis helping out in the kitchen. Prior to this, I had only had fleeting associations with George, and due to his striking appearance, always wondered if there was an Amish community in Gisborne that I was unaware of. I later discovered that he wasn't particularly religious at all, but he and Glennis were always doing good for someone or some organisation. I always looked forward to spending time with George, as we had a lot of downtime, so plenty of long, in-depth conversations with George and Pete, solving the problems of the world. George had spent the early part of his life working in Papua New Guinea, and his stories of that time were fascinating. He was a very well-read man and could offer an informed opinion on any subject you might like to mention. He was very well regarded as a farmer and a genuine Mr. Fix-It. George and Glennis have been one of those couples who have quietly gone about the business of doing good in the community, not seeking applause or recognition, but just because they saw the need. George was a genuine good man and will be sadly missed by all who knew him. Rest in peace, George.
Right, this one's not me, it's my sister Vianne down in Christchurch. Hiya, my message to Grandad. How do I start to define what you've meant to me and given to me as my grandalf? I have so many memories that I cherish, riding in the back of the truck with inner tubes on the farm, sitting on the back of the motorbike with the dogs, the countless books you read to us, playing in the hay bales before sitting on them and kicking them off the truck to feed the cows as you drove slowly through the paddock, holding onto a sack behind the quad bike as you zoomed around the mud, hanging over the fences in the woolshed watching you work after coming with Glenn to bring you afternoon tea, going to the A&P show with our own pocket money, and leaving with half of it still in our pockets because you gleefully spoiled us, getting ice creams in Makaraka on the way to Kupinga, sitting on twinkle toes at Pine Ridge, and riding Prudence at Kupinga, going with you to feed the dogs and seeing Goofy smile and Ace catch his meat, sitting on your bed every Christmas morning opening stockings, you and Glenn driving me down to Christchurch when I moved, your genuine excitement whenever I achieved something, no matter how small, all the times you attended performances for singing and school events, your delighted acceptance and love for my wife and our little girl. I have never felt anything but supported and loved by you, and am so grateful I got to have you for so long. You helped to craft me into who I am in immeasurable ways. My work ethic, my resilience, my figure-it-out attitude to problem solving. My love for knowledge and information is very much something that undoubtedly comes from you, the master of general knowledge. I too am described as being great on quiz nights, and people frequently ask where on earth I learned so many seemingly random skills and knowledge. Between you and Pop, I've been lucky to learn so many skills and so much practical knowledge that I still use in everyday situations today. You have opened up a shining example of what I should expect from a partner, with how you and Glenn love each other, and what I should expect of myself when caring for others. The example you have shown is something I have held up to judge many others, and let me tell you, a lot have fallen short. There are so many traces of you in my life, in my house, in my opinions, and in my heart, and my love and gratitude to you is something that will always be a part of me. My childhood is filled with beloved memories, and I'm so glad that my Amelia got to know you too. Thank you for being my grandalf. All my love, Pyatt.
George, Papa, Dad, Grandad, you will be so missed, but are so loved. Simon and I have had the privilege of sharing Dad with our other siblings for basically all our lives, as our parents, Ian and Anne, and Glennie and George, were best of friends, and after the early loss of our dad Ian, we were gathered up and folded into the Neilsons. We had a great childhood with many farm visits in the school holidays and many shared adventures, horse riding, feeding out on the old tractor, playing in the hay barn, the wool sheds, and making huts in the bush on the farm, but also learning a few skills along the way. We were also lucky enough to have many summer adventures at the beach patch at Makaraka. We would often be on the beach or up the hill to the lookout until Glennie rang the bell to come home. George has always been there for us, a quiet and dignified gentleman, but strong, patiently sharing his knowledge where needed. He carried the strength and dignity through the last few months to the end of his journey. We shared many Christmases with the Neilson clan and extras, and there was frequently extras. The food table always groaning with plenty of food and desserts, and Dad was always there in the centre, taking it all in, surrounded by the people he loved. When I was lucky enough to become a mum to Grace, and I rang to tell them about an extra grandchild, George and Glennie welcomed Grace with open arms. George loved his grandies, especially reading to them and supporting them in their pursuits. George loved watching Gracie and her dancing too, and coming to watch wherever possible. So although we are sad at having to say goodbye, we are grateful at being part of his life. And I found a poem that I thought was appropriate. You can shed tears that he is gone, or you can smile because he has lived. You can close your eyes and hope that he will come back, or you can open your eyes and see all that he has left. Your heart can be empty because you can't see him, or you can be full of the love that you shared. You can turn your back on tomorrow and live yesterday, or you can be happy for tomorrow because of yesterday. You can remember him and only that he is gone, or you can cherish his memory and let it live on. You can cry and close your mind, be empty and turn your back, or you can do what he would want, smile, open your eyes, love, and go on.
Well, Dad, we thought it was time for one last story. Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy. All of his grandchildren have had this story through the years. If you know it, please feel free to read with us.
Out of the gate and off for a walk went Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy. And Hercules Morse, as big as a horse, with Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy. Bottomly pots covered in spots, Hercules Morse, as big as a horse, and Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy. Muffin McClay like a bundle of hay, bottomly pots covered in spots, Hercules Morse, as big as a horse, and
Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy.
Bits of Maloney all skinny and bony, Muffin McClay like a bundle of hay, bottomly pots covered in spots, Hercules Morse, as big as a horse,
and Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy.
Schnitzel von Krumm with a very low tum, bits of Maloney all skinny and bony, Muffin McClay like a bundle of hay, bottomly pots covered in spots, Hercules Morse as big as a horse, and
Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy.
With tails in the air they trotted on down past the shops in the park to the far end of town. They sniffed at the smells, they snooped at each door, when suddenly, out of the shadow they saw Scarface Claw, the toughest Tom in town. Yow! Said Scarface Claw, and off with a yowl and a wail and a howl and a scatter of paws and a clatter of claws went Schnitzel von Krumm with a very low tum, bits of Maloney all skinny and bony, Muffin McClay like a bundle of hay, bottomly pots covered in spots, Hercules Morse as big as a horse, and Harry McCleary from Donaldson's Dairy. Straight back home to bed. Thank you, George.
I'm Sears, Dad's youngest son. I got to spend thousands of hours with Dad on the farms over the years, from being a wee kid, probably getting in the way and making the job longer and harder, to being almost helpful, holding tools and opening gates, to being useful, getting the next tool, feeding the hay off the trailer, to loading the hay, feeding out on my own, to vaccinating and drenching, working dogs and moving stock, to supervising the farm when he had open heart surgery. We often didn't talk, we just walked alongside each other in comfortable silence, knowing exactly what we each needed to do next to get the job done. I remember him patiently explaining things to me, often twice when I was younger, and we laughed a lot. Even near the end, we were laughing. He said he didn't want to get splinters from the coffin, so he came to supervise and make sure I sanded it correctly. When I said I could put his ashes in a staple box, he said, "That would be appropriate for a farmer. I've emptied a few over the years. Now I get to fill one." Things Dad taught me: how to be steady in the storm, soft in the silence, be proud, not arrogant, be strong when it matters, be somebody's safe place, and don't upset the cook.
Good afternoon, I'm Joanne Neilson. I'm better known as George's favourite daughter-in-law. Some would say only daughter-in-law, but I'll go with the former, thank you. George was instrumental in today's service. He discussed the music he wanted and how it would run, and he wanted this read, and it's from The Prophet. By Gilbray, first published in 1923. And what of marriage? You are born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together till the white wings of death scatter your days. You shall be together in the silence. Let there be spaces between your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bond of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cups, but drink not from the same cup. Give each other your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone. Even as the strings of the lute be alone, though they quiver with the same music. Give of your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together, for the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadows. Thank you, George.
Thank you to each of our speakers today for sharing those heartfelt memories and stories, and a story. Through your words, you have reminded us of George's wisdom, of his gentleness, his humour, and his enduring love for his family. We'll now take a quiet few moments as we reflect with a piece of music that brought George joy. As the music plays, you may wish to reflect on your own memories of George, perhaps a conversation shared, a quiet act of kindness, a story told, or simply being in the comfort of his presence. As we come to the close of today's farewell, we give thanks for George's life, for the example he set, for the love he gave so freely, and for the many lives he enriched simply by being himself. George leaves behind a legacy of kindness, quiet strength, dignity, adventure, and devotion to his family. Those qualities will continue on in the people he loved and encouraged throughout his life. In accordance with George's wishes, a private cremation will take place. At the conclusion of the service, you are warmly invited to remain here with family for refreshments, fellowship, and the sharing of stories and memories of George. Something I think he would appreciate. Not quite sure what that is. Something outside. The family have also gathered a collection of treasured photos of George's life, which will continue to play throughout the afternoon on the screen down the back. Please take the opportunity to watch, to reflect, and to remember, and enjoy the moments shared by the family of George throughout his life. To Glenn and the family, thank you for allowing us to be part of this farewell today. And to George, a loving husband, a father, a grandfather, a great-grandfather, a reader, a gentleman, a man who loved sunshine, songs and laughter, and championed to many. May you rest in peace.